So, welcome. Some campaign updates as I prepare to sell my boat and hit the road trying to red pill the military, wake them up to treason in this country. I've been reading Francis Parker Yockey. I'm on page 460 something. And he hit the nail on the head, something that the Founding Fathers had warned about, the imbalancing of the powers. Now, we have three branches of government, and one of them, at the turn of the 17th to 18th century, established itself as something with the ultimate veto over all of the other branches. And that's something I wish to redress. So what I'm going to do when elected president is appoint 18 Supreme Court justices. They will all take a vow to abolish the principle of judicial review, and they will also take a vow that they will establish the precedent of being able to use 2/3 majority to dismiss other Supreme Court justices, with the need for new justices to be appointed only after there are down to 8. So this will be a packing of the Supreme Court. Everything that has been done to destroy this country has been done through the way that the Jews do their subversion, or they run their own tribe, which is through a council of elders. Now, I don't know if you know it, but 3, most likely 4 of our Supreme Court justices 2 years ago were ethnically Jewish. So we have 4 out of 9 Supreme Court justices, guaranteed 3, possibly 4, that are Jewish. And what has been passed with the Supreme Court after it granted itself the principle of judicial review? It granted itself unlimited power to strike down all laws and set precedents that are not its power to set via the Constitution and the 10th Amendment. So these 18 Supreme Court justices will then attack and annihilate the existing Judeo order of the court. They will sentence the other ones to being dismissed from the court. They will find their peers unfit to reign, unfit to be judges. And after they've finished undoing every single case that has ever come across and become something used for judicial review, once they've restored the Constitution, once they've restored freedom of association, at that point they will then dismiss as many of the existing 9 Supreme Court justices as possible. Now, what this would trigger would be a restoration of the Constitution, and everyone ever granted amnesty would be deported. So that would fix the demographics of this country, the founding stock, the progeny to whom the country was left by the Founding Fathers. That is a living will, a living trust. We are the progeny of the Founding Fathers. And they made clear what their immigration laws were. So what would that look like? That would look like the country before Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, this has been done twice before. Ulysses S. Grant and Franklin Delano Roosevelt stacked the courts. They did this to challenge the existing court order. Right now, this country is ruled by the Supreme Court as well as a bunch of foreign lobbies, but the people will the enforcement of laws, and the JEW, judicial system, says no, you can't have your laws enforced. This is critical. All of the cases that stopped states from enforcing immigration law, this was all struck down by the court system. So What we're talking about is the upholding of the Constitution, the restoration of it. Now, we must see the Constitution for what it is, and that is the implement, but that is the tool by which the will of the people is implemented. Ultimately, it is the people's will and the well-being of the country that the government has to do, not the bidding of an international syndicate of private Jewish bankers. Once we've restored the 10th Amendment, the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and the Second Amendment, by getting rid of these judicial activists and by making it forever known that there will never again be a principle of judicial review, we can start tackling the other issues. I would call on people to march on Washington, D.C. if the Senate tried to filibuster or block my appointments. This is something Trump could do, but he won't because he's a coward and a whore of the Jews. That's my platform, appointing 18 new Supreme Court judges to bring the total to 27. And there's nothing in the Constitution stopping me from doing that if I were elected president. I could do that. Anyhow, so that's about it. I've been noticing some things that Dr. Duke has been posting on his Twitter wall. Putin really is woke. I really think Putin is our guy. And these people saying that Putin's working for the Jews, I'm thinking that is divide and conquer right there. I think he really has done a good job of freeing his country of Jewish power to a large extent. I'm reading Yaki's Imperium right now, and I'm just taken aback by some of the thoughts that I've had earlier in my life, and he gives them words like I had never given them. But I highly recommend Francis Parker Yaki's Imperium. It really gets good between pages 400 and 500. So I'll take some questions from the chat now before I get back to doing some stuff I have to do. Let's see. Yeah, John Henney says Trump grabs his ankles for Israel. That's right, he does. So let's see. Do we have any questions here? Oh, back to something I forgot to mention last night, by the way. At the same time as I almost said Cologne Cathedral, as the Notre Dame Cathedral was burning, which I don't think that's a coincidence. The mosque in Jerusalem, the third holiest site in Islam, was set on fire, and I don't think that's a coincidence. So, Ian, Roe v. Wade is an example of something that was done with judicial review. That is something that would be undone by the principle of getting rid of the trump card the Supreme Court has, which is what unbalances the whole three branches of government, and that is the principle of judicial review. So yes, Roe v. Wade, Brown versus Board of Education, all of these are things that violated the 10th Amendment. So Grumpy Cat, I'm going to show it, says, Patrick Little, pay attention now to me. Look here, Putin made Holocaust denial into law in 2014. However, he has courts that have made it so you can criticize the Holocaust. So this is like when Stalin was purging Jews from the government of the USSR in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. He would say, oh no, we're so against anti-Semitism, and then he'd execute 100 people, 99 of which were Jews that were Zionists. And he'd say, oh yeah, we're so opposed to anti-Semitism, and then he'd purge a bunch of Jews from the government. Putin's doing the same thing. Putin's wide awake. Putin's our guy. And it took me a long time to reach this decision, but after reading Yaki, I'm convinced. The Russians did liberate themselves from the Jews incrementally starting in the 30s. And so Putin having signed a Holocaust denial law in 2014, that was just him giving lip service to the Jews. What he then did is have his courts make it so that it's now legal in Russia to question the Holocaust. So Putin's very clever. His IQ's got to be at least 130, 140. And I would look forward to working with him as your president. I would make a mutual protection pact with Russia. If they were willing to... If Russia signed a free trade agreement with the United States, I would sign a mutual defense pact with Russia. Let's see. let's see. What else we got going on here? So David Sheckelgrabber says, "Hey Pat, I'm 15 and I will always support you, man. I have cousins who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I want them to wake up. I fully support you to the end. What do you think about Belarus?" Belarus or Little Russia? I'm not sure. It's the most impoverished country in Eastern Europe. In Europe, that's what I know about Belarus. Let's see. Yeah, Zionist Jews own the U.S. government, says civil rights for infants. Yep. No genital mutilation on anyone under the age of 18. You don't have the right to chop someone's dick or mutilate their vagina. Genital mutilation is morally reprehensible and illegal. A child cannot give consent to have his genitals mutilated. And I want my foreskin back. So, just to let you know, I have debts and stuff from my Senate campaign. Financially, I'm not in the best shape. I will be living hand to mouth while I'm on the road in my bus or RV this summer. I'm going to be like a poverty-stricken monk, and everything's going to be transparent through the FEC Form 3 filings. You'll be able to see where I spend every penny, and it's mostly going to go into the RV's gas tank. In terms of signs and stuff, I want you to print the signs. I'm going to put the yard signs and the bumper sticker designs on the website, and so that you don't have to funnel the money through my campaign, you can just print them off yourself. Print off 1,000, print off 5,000, and hand them out to friends and neighbors and loved ones, especially troops. We need little 2020 stickers in all the military bases. I want to see every Marine, every sailor, every airman with a little 2020 bumper sticker. I want every highway patrolman in California. I want every sheriff's official. I want every sheriff's deputy, every police officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain. I want them all on their personally owned vehicles, their POVs, to have little 2020 stickers. We're taking back our country and restoring the Constitution. They swore an oath to it, and if they really want to keep that oath, they're going to vote for me. Right now, I'm using my GI Bill at a community college here in the Bay Area, but it is such an awkward thing going into the school. The professors know who I am, but there are laws protecting me. But at the same time, going in and studying social justice, which is what pretty much political science is, where I'm going, is it's too much doublethink. The whole time I'm just sitting there with my mouth zipped, trying not to speak. It is my GI Bill has been able to keep me afloat, but this summer I'm going to go on the road, and I have a source of income. I'm going to try and service my debts with that. But in terms of the bus, the gas for the bus, all of that is campaign stuff, so I can use the campaign to house me on the road as I'm a candidate on the road. If I could afford a whole train like some candidates have in the past, I would get a train, but it's going to be an RV or a bus. Someone asked me if girls recognize me and flirt with me. No, almost no one recognizes me here in the Bay Area. Let's see. Women like guys in suits, though. If you're single, suits are good for finding a spouse. Well, Alexandra here says, I'm not an idiot. Russia is surrounded by American bases. Working with them does not mean completely bending the knee. And I don't think Putin wants us to bend the knee. I think he just wants Russia to continue to exist and not be crushed by the international Zog. And I'd like to facilitate the survival of the Russian people and a future for Russian children, the same as I'd like to facilitate a future for white children everywhere, and for all children, for Palestinian children, for the oppressed that the Jews have oppressed all around the world. I want to be a beacon of liberty for all peoples who currently have the boot of the Jew on their neck. All right, let's see. But yeah, liberating Russia from the Jews will be part of the geostrategic balance of power. Liberating Russia from the Jews, which right now Russia is under threat from Jewish proxy forces all around it. And a lot of those are subsidized by the current Zionist-occupied elected government of the United States, which is bought and paid for illegally with unlimited amounts of black money ever since Citizens United, which overturned the limits on campaign spending, giving anything that carries the moniker of Political Action Committee now can receive unlimited funds. and it's just a way of funneling money to candidates. I want to outlaw candidates receiving money from anything other than individual U.S. citizens, and if anyone's found guilty of campaign bundling or approaching people to be intermediaries for giving money under the limit, then that will be a felony. That's what I will ask the Senate or the Congress to introduce as a bill. Campaign bundling, I want to make that a felony, which is now common practice. Campaign bundling, Jews go around to all their family members. A rich Jew goes to all his family members and says, here's $2,700 for each of you, give it to this candidate. And I think that should be illegal. I think that should be a felony. I think that should be a 20-year minimum in prison with no eligibility for parole. But that's something the legislature would have to do. Let's see what else we got here in the chat. Let's see. Yes, ADL, I'll take away your funding. I'm going to make it illegal. I would sign a law that made it illegal for Jews to collect money on behalf of any type of Holocaust-based propaganda in this country. So Kratom Connoisseur asked me about logistics. Step one would be the courts, packing the courts to restore the Constitution. And there are different expressions of different governments that work for different peoples, and the American people, being the progeny of those who loved liberty, should value a government that values liberty. So I would be constitutional. And if there became a state of emergency from Jews trying to assassinate people, or if the Jews tried to assassinate me like Kennedy, or like the Jews killed Lincoln, or the Jews that tried to kill Andrew Jackson, I would declare a state of emergency and start interning Jews that were involved with Jewish ethnic interest organizations, or any Jew that has ever used an Israeli passport. They would be labeled a domestic enemy if there was an attempt on my life. There have been 109 countries, something like 500 kingdoms that have expelled the Jews. Jews are a force of internal subversion. It's not every single Jew, but when there's a group that's at war, as the Jews as a group are, you can't leave any options off the table in terms of winning that war. We would be guided by the rules of the Geneva Convention unless they became underground partisans or terrorists. We would consider all Jews that acted against the government to be hostiles of the state of Israel, and if they wish to receive treatment as prisoners of war per the Geneva Convention, any Jews committing any acts of war against the country would have to be wearing an Israeli uniform. Jews that were not wearing an Israeli uniform while they committed espionage or other things would be considered foreign spies, and per military law they could be hung on the spot. So Alex Redman asks at Little Revolution, what are your thoughts on free trade? And I'm against free trade if the free trade is being done with a country that is an enemy of the United States, or if the country is being used as a way to destroy our industry. So, for example, the Jews subsidized Chinese industry so it could destroy American industry, leaving us powerless if we ever decided to stand up against globalism, and we're close to that state. We've got very few steel mills. We have almost no plastics manufacture in this country. So we would look for fair trade, not free trade. However, if people entered into mutual defense pacts with us, if they had if they were governing per the will of their people, if they had governments that invested in authority in trustworthy characters, we would then talk about friendly economic terms and friendly trading terms. But yes, Jews that acted to subvert the country that were not wearing the military uniform of the IDF or the Israeli Defense Forces would be considered spies. And this would include anyone working for the Israeli government. The first thing I would do is declare war emergency powers against Israel, and in turn everyone that is affiliated with the Israeli government. There would be no negotiations. I would be able to do that for several months without needing the approval of the Congress. I would use the Marine Corps as a liberation tool to intern all of the people who have ever visited Israel and interrogate them. If they visited Israel as part of some church group thing or something, and they would be shown 2 weeks mandatory films about Jewish treason against the United States, and they would be shown films on the USS Liberty. I would commission the War Department, the Department of Defense, to produce films about Israeli terrorist attacks against the United States. And every member of any church that considers itself Zionist would receive incentive to view these films at a government funded education facility where they learn about Israeli terrorism against the United States. If you don't think that Israel is at war with the American people, look at their role in the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing, where the IDF opened the perimeter to let through the useful idiots that bombed the Marine Corps barracks in Beirut, Lebanon in 1983. Look at the USS Liberty, where the Israelis firebombed American troops on a ship after torpedoes and napalm and machine gun fire and rockets and cannon fire into the ship. Look at the Lavon affair, where Jews from Israel planted IEDs in our morale, wellness, and readiness facilities, our MWR facilities in Egypt. Israel is a state that has committed acts of war against the United States, and the first thing I would do was I would declare emergency powers to isolate all of Israel's proxy forces here in the United States. I would arrest many heads of media that were shown to be subversive working for the government of Israel. And at that point, I would demand the Congress declare war on Israel, and at which point we would recover our strategic nuclear resources from the terrorist rogue nuclear power in the Middle East, Israel. Let's see. So, National Socialist Christian says, America equals Israel's bitch. Not if you elect me, it won't be. Israel will be, they will face a war where their only option out, if they want to survive, is unconditional surrender. Cherry says, elections are rigged. How would you get in? Well, we would have the public make such a spectacle. If I were kept out of the election or there were election fraud, they would regret it. The main thing is winning the support of the military. That way, if the Jews attempt any type of act of war against my candidacy, we would have the backing of the military and the police. But think about this. You want immigration reform? Well, the first thing is to undo all of the unconstitutional stuff that has been done to subvert our immigration law. We could there are families costing this country something like $16,000 a year between state and federal funds, a net drag on the economy. Think about housing prices in California. When all the illegals and anyone ever granted amnesty and their descendants are deported, housing prices in the Bay Area here, the sanctuary city, I bet there will be 2-bedroom apartments now going for $4,500 a month that will be going for $1,200 a month. I'm going to make housing affordable. That's another promise to you. The way I'm going to make housing affordable again, make it so the rent isn't too damn high, and pay attention, if you're black, you need to vote for me if you're concerned about gentrification. The pressure on real estate prices in California and the Bay Area isn't coming from yuppies so much as it's coming from illegals that are packing 8 families deep into one apartment, and the state and the federal government are paying for it. If you're black, you need to vote for me because I'm going to make the rent affordable again. If you're white, you need to vote for me. I'm going to stop the Jewish attempt at white genocide. I get along with plenty of people that are Arabs, whites, blacks. I get along with them great. All they need to do is give me the time of day, talk to me, and they'll see that I've got the truth on my side, and we've got the truth on our side. Let's see. Oh, Kratom Connoisseur says, I'll sticker all over Orange County for you. Please do. I'm going to be putting logos on my website in the near future, and once I finish up the semester, I'll have a lot more time. Using my GI Bill this semester was a mistake. I had to prove there's a reason I did it. I'm trying to prove something to someone, and I think that's just about proved, but that's personal. Let's see. Yogi Tolord asks, would you be expelled, denied access to military bases, no jaywalking to be tolerated, right? Well, Yogi, the law doesn't stop me from being near military bases. Part of me upholding my oath to the Constitution I took as a member of the military, which is an oath for life, is to defend this republic and its Constitution from enemies foreign and domestic, and waking up our troops as they are going to base or coming from base with signs, inviting them to come talk to me, etc., etc. This is something that all troops are allowed to do. They can stop and talk to me, they can see my signs, and I'll wake them up. We're going to make films about the USS Liberty. We're going to talk about the Lavon affair, the Israeli involvement in the 1983 Marine Corps barracks bombing, and the top priority for me is going to be red pilling the Marine Corps because of things like the 1983 barracks bombing. The Marines need to know just how bad the Jews have fucked them over. And the Marine Corps is also the branch I would need the most loyalty from. I would need to have the most loyalty in the Constitution because they're the branch that can be used through the War Powers Emergency Acts. All right. So let's see. So Ian, I will try to be there. That is around my last final time, and if I don't want to have to pay back my GI Bill, I can't miss class. Rex Imperator asks, Pat, have you read Dostoevsky on the JQ? I read Crime and Punishment before I was woke, about halfway through. If I have time, I'll read him on the JQ. Send Pat at littlerevolution.us any clips you wish me to see, or any excerpts you think I should read. Yeah, so Kratom Connoisseur, in inland California, I've been very effective at red pilling boomers on the terrorist state of Israel as being an enemy of the United States. I've talked about Israeli acts of war and terrorist attacks against the United States military and civilian targets. It's something I'm very effective at. I'm going to play to that strength. And military towns also have a lot of veterans around them because they'll tend to have a military, a VA hospital around. So VA hospitals will be another area where I will be outside of. Yeah, John Henney says, our military people need to be awakened to the Zog. Yep, if they want to fulfill their oath to the Constitution, they need to understand our foreign and domestic enemies. Absolutely. Okay. Doug T, I already answered this question. What would you do about the Federal Reserve? Abolish it. I would sign an executive order stating that it is an unconstitutional organization, and I would ask the Congress to revoke its charter. If we couldn't get that, I would just see whatever. I wouldn't take any options off the table, but pretty much everyone in the Federal Reserve would be arrested. That's something I could use the FBI for. What I could also do is